Good morning. This is Richard Cheng for the Sativa Segment. We're filming episode 18 today. I am without my co-host today. Don't know Neo. He's not feeling well and lost his voice. So, Byron, it'll just be you and I. Before we get started, I like to point out that this episode is fueled by Ritter Spencer Cheng. It's a local law firm here in Addison, Texas. We are in Addison, and I am one of the partners at the firm. It's a one-stop shop for a variety of different types of businesses. Although we do emphasize the industries in healthcare and also alternative substances. Before we get started, I also like to point out that this episode is going to air a couple months from now, but this is officially my last episode to record in 2023. So I'm looking forward to the new year, and hopefully I'll have some more interesting content. Today we have Byron Campbell from Capital Insights.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it.
How's it going?
It's going all right.
We've known each other for a while.
We have known each other for a while. It's been almost 10 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
almost 10 years. Yeah.
Jeez. So how are things on the Hill?
They're interesting.
The Texas Hill.
Yeah, the Texas Hill. They're interesting. We had 3 special sessions this year. Yeah. So if for our viewers and listeners that don't know, Texas is the legislature is in every other year for 140 days. Okay. And then the governor can decide to call a special session on whatever he feels like wasn't covered during the regular session. They had 3 this year and left them in session all the way through October, I believe. So it's a long time. It's gotten pretty ugly. Obviously, there was the impeachment trial of Attorney General Paxton that took some time. So it's gotten pretty ugly in Austin. But that's politics. Yeah,
and you know what? We will go down that path here a little bit later in the show. But let's get to know you. Sure. And talk about the fact that you're a lobbyist, mm-hmm. and that you have your own lobbying firm with your dad, mm-hmm. Drew. Mm-hmm. And you guys function throughout the state, mm-hmm. With an emphasis in Dallas and some municipalities, and also we of course know each other through the cannabis industry. And this is what, of course, this is what the show is about. Right. But how did you get into lobbying? Tell me a little bit what precipitated leading up to the lobbying career. Your education background, did you have any prior work experience?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up here in DFW and went to University of North Texas. Mm-hmm. Got the opportunity to play football up there.
Mean Green.
Go Mean Green, you bet.
They've really improved that campus.
The campus is incredible, and the city of Denton has actually exploded. When I was there was a Sack and Save was the only place to go get groceries, and that was about it. But now it's really improved.
I mean, before it's always been known kind of like a commuter school, sure, and people just go there to get their education. But it's a legit campus now.
Yeah, we have over 40,000 students, and I was the president of the Alumni Association for 4 years. So I am and was heavily involved, but really proud of the school, really proud of what we've done in the last 20 years, really. It's got over 40,000 students. It's grown all of its research foundation, and it's become very competitive, very legitimate school here in Texas.
Yeah, I taught there.
When?
Well, I taught at the law school.
Oh, okay. Well, that's in Dallas.
It's in Dallas, but I taught a cannabis law class.
That's awesome.
At the UNT Law School.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of great things down there.
They are, and they've really kind of gutted the old courthouse and made it into a really nice law school. Yeah. But campus is impressive. You played football there. Yep. What position did you play?
I played linebacker.
Okay.
Yeah. Did that for a number of years. We won a conference title, went to a bowl game, so had some fun experience there. But I majored in political science. Okay. And as you mentioned, my dad is my business partner. He's been a lobbyist for over 40 years. I grew up around politics. I was a page on the House floor in Austin when I was 6 years old. So I've grown up around politics. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to DC for an internship.
Smart move on not going to law school.
Well, all my lawyer friends tell me.
Smart move.
It's the smartest thing you've ever done. Yeah. And So I had an internship with Congressman Pete Sessions, who was in Dallas at the time, and then got a job working for John Boehner on the Education Workforce Committee. So that was my graduate degree, was working on the Hill for 2 years. Okay. And gathering that knowledge and institutional knowledge and contacts in DC. Moved home and started.
That must have been interesting working for Sessions.
Yeah, as we call him, Uncle Pete. He still is. He's back. His seat is actually in Waxahachie now. So okay. He's back in Congress. When I was there, he was a very powerful member of the Congress and did a lot of great things for me in my career. So I'll always feel indebted to him. He's always been great to me. Little divisive now, but things change.
He has a strong voice in Congress, though.
He does.
He has a very strong voice in Congress. I'm sure you learned a lot from him.
Learned an incredible amount.
So give me one thing that you think that was probably one of the most valuable lessons you learned from people like Pete Sessions working for them.
Pete's the one that talked me out of law school.
Oh, good for him.
So for every intern, he would spend 30 minutes with and just kind of, so what do you want to do? What are the things you're interested in? And I was actually in an LSAT course at Georgetown, getting ready to take the LSAT. And he said, look, politics is in your blood. Use DC, use this experience as your graduate degree for what you'll go and do later. And it's turned out to be excellent advice. So, on that end, just life advice, that he was the one that said, nah, don't do this. But as far as, honestly, some of the biggest lessons I learned from him were on the campaign trail. And just, that was one of the things that he would do when he was here in Dallas that were so, impressive. He had lunch at the same place every day, and all his constituents knew that. And he put himself right in the middle of where, his voters were. He was accessible, and just as I'll never run for office and never want to, but representing clients, being a conduit with legislators. If 99% of my job is showing up. You show up, your face is seen, people recognize you, they trust you, they build that trust, and that's what Pete did when he represented Dallas. Many years ago, was he was present. He was always around.
It's so interesting how, like you said, 90% of the work is showing up. Yeah. That physical presence really generates and garners a lot of trust in people. Yeah. People want to see familiar faces.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Whether you're good, bad, or indifferent, they want a trusted face.
It's one of those things where it's like every time I turn around, I run into you, and then that's how you started a relationship. You're just seen at the Capitol because it takes time. It takes a lot of footwork.
Do you think it's a matter of being present, people associating the presence with competence, or do you think that it's just a factor of I'm seeing him, I'm getting to know him as a person, and therefore I trust him?
I think it's both, because it's one of those things that my dad's always said is you always want people to catch you working, and when you're at the Capitol, you're working, and whether it's having meetings or it's handing out flyers or it's sitting in the pit. The pit is the kind of the rotunda just outside of the chamber, the House of Representatives, and that's where our lobbyists sit, and we can catch members as they're going in and ask them for one last thing before they vote on something, and it's like I said, they catch you working. And that's clients too. Clients see that too, potential clients in the Capitol. But members see that happen, and they trust you. They know you're a hard worker. You're not just parachuting in the day of a hearing, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the common misconceptions is, session starts on January 3rd. It's time to get to work.
Right.
No, work starts right now. In an odd numbered year when. In the interim, that's really when you build those relationships. And if you've got a client or you've got an issue that you really want to push, it starts right now, because members can start filing bills in December, and of next year, obviously. And all that groundwork is done. Once you hit the ground in January of an odd numbered year, you're too late. You can't show up hat in hand.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean of always being seen and showing up, because otherwise you're wasting their time.
I've always heard, and of course I'm no lobbyist and I'm not a politician, but I've always heard the years in Texas, at least the even years, which are the planning years leading up to session in the following odd year, are sometimes more important than the actual session itself, because you're getting all your relationships lined up, you're thinking and planning and strategizing about the following year. Tell me a little bit about those off years.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And it's hard to convince a client of that sometimes.
Well, because it's not imminent, right? And so money has to come out of their pocket, and things aren't imminent.
So that's something that we have to convince our clients is, look, this is really when a lot of work gets done. We introduced our clients to the representatives, help get some elected. This is campaign season, so that's obviously a big part of it. But yeah, it's you have to go find a champion, an author for a bill that you're trying to pass. You start that now, because again, once session starts, things happen so quickly, and you can't say, "Oh, we have this idea." That it's too late. Too much is that they already have their plate. Their plate's already full of bills that they want to pass, and that starts this coming year. And it's a lot of showing up in. I tell you, showing up in a member's district to help them campaign, or just to go visit them, goes a long way. Now, it's a big state, right? So I think it'd be a lot of travel, but it's worth its weight in gold when it comes to session time, because it's like, yeah, you came and saw me in my district in, Llano, Texas or whatever. And that means a lot to me. That means you care about this, you care about me. So
they remember that.
They remember that.
Yeah.
They absolutely, as opposed to, giving them a check, at the Austin Club in Austin. You're one of 1,000 lobbyists that are, down there, going out and visiting them and showing up at where they live is always kind of been a little, secret of ours.
Sure. So let's pivot a little bit about your endeavors with Capital Insights. That's the name of your lobbying firm.
Yeah.
You own it 50-50 with your dad?
Correct.
Drew?
Yeah.
So was it interesting pairing up with your dad as a business partner?
Yeah, it's something that we talked about. So after I was done with Pete, I went to work for Kay Bailey Hutchison, former United States Senator.
Yeah.
I worked for her here in Dallas for 6 years. And then when she decided to retire, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And my dad and I had always talked about putting something together. He's been, like I said, he's been a lobbyist for a long time. And when she retired, I said, screw it, let's give us a shot. So it was really him, really wanting to put this together. And it's obviously got its pluses and minuses. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, I gave with the nepotism tag every once in a while, which is fine. I totally understand it. But at the same time, my dad's never been an elected official, but he really is a big personality and a big person in the Capitol. So I'll always be Drew's son. So there's always kind of that thing,
right?
Which isn't not bad at all, but it's just kind of it cuts both ways.
But I mean, from our discussions, your dad actually sounds like a pretty fair person.
Oh,
in the sense
absolutely.
that he didn't bring you in and say, Drew, you're going to get the minority share of this firm. He wanted you as an equal partner.
Yeah.
He wanted you to have an equal say.
Yeah.
He didn't want you to feel like you're his employee,
right,
because he's Drew.
Right.
Now, being that your dad's older, I'm assuming he's much older than you. Was it a challenge getting him over the hump of saying, okay, our lobbying firm is okay with embarking on this cannabis and alternative substances industry? Yeah,
it was. And honestly, it kind of continues to be in a little way. My endeavor started in 2015 or so, when a number of laws started changing around the country. And obviously Texas is, as anyone will tell you, the 8th largest GDP in the world. And so, and I work here. I was even younger than I am now. I felt like this is the next prohibition. This is a once in a generation opportunity for business to just start from zero and get in on the ground floor. And I looked at it as I wanted to be an owner. I don't want to lobby for this. I want to be a part of this. And so that was the way that I got started. And
because we talked about this, you applied.
Well, yeah, I did. I put a group together.
Yeah.
We traveled to California, raised some money, learned a whole lot. Learned how much I didn't know, and obviously didn't get a license. Didn't really underestimated what it took.
Wasn't that round interesting though?
It was very interesting.
What was it? 48 applicants, right?
48, yeah.
Yeah. So I represent one of the applicants myself, and we talked about that. But it was it was the first time that Texas ever had a round,
right?
And it was unknown what was going to happen.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. And nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right. And their conditions and restrictions were so tight. They were so narrow that, a lot of people were like, is this even worth it? That's one of the things we heard in California.
That's when they still had the ratio between CBD and THC, and it was still 0.5% instead of the 1% cap. I remember all that. And, because our compassionate use program didn't launch didn't get legalized until June 1st of 2015.
Right.
And so I think application rounds was maybe started late 16, maybe?
Yeah. No, they were doing 17. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was that process. And, like I said, I did, it was interesting to talk to other lobbyists in other states.
Yeah.
And especially like Colorado, who'd been doing it even by then for a while, and some of the stuff they already regretted. They wish that they hadn't allowed, and these are the lobbyists that are, working for these companies. They wish they hadn't allowed home grows, because they were saying that's where 99% of the, overdoses come from. People are making their own brownies and have no idea what's in there.
Right.
And then gummies, they felt like it was just too close to candy. And, most of the emergency room visits were for children that had gotten into something that they shouldn't have. And so it was really,
that was the platform, actually, how it was sold to Texans.
Right.
Intractable epilepsy, right?
Right.
Kids dying from seizures.
Right.
And, I think we had a 70% approval rating by Texans, because how do you argue against dying kids with epileptic seizures?
Right.
So,
well, we have a 70% approval rating just for recreational. If you just polled everyone in Texas.
Is that today, or was that
No,
back
that's
then?
today. That's today.
Okay.
And that's the thing that, it really has evolved in the state. Because, that was just not even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And this last session, there was a bill to further expand the compassionate use program. It came flying out of the House, and then, kind of met its demise in the Senate. But just 2 years before, you couldn't have. You would have had a big fight in a committee and a big fight on the floor. And this one had the support of a big chairman. It was actually the chairwoman's bill. And so it technically has the support of the speaker, because she's the lieutenant of the speaker, and anything that she wants to get done, speaker has to, not a firm like, yes, you can do this, but a rubber stamp. And so it's changed a lot. And even at DPS, who is over the compassionate use program, and talking to some of the folks that work over there, they want it to be a very viable, very successful program.
Sure.
So it's changed a lot.
Yeah, 21 was an interesting year, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I remember that. I wasn't as involved this last legislative session, with the exception of course, you and I worked on a project together in 23.
Yeah.
Aside from that, that was kind of a big undertaking, right?
Yeah.
So that took a lot of time. And what was your insight on the whole process?
So you and I worked for a company that was, back up a second. So DPS had announced that they were going to open up and expand licenses.
Yeah, but that rumor came out as early as October of 2022.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And so words kind of trickled out.
Yeah.
And And it wasn't really known like what were the deadlines. We were still never told like how many licenses were going to be issued. Or I think do you think that some of that was in response to the PTSD added qualifying condition in 21?
As far as them talking about adding more?
Yeah, adding more licenses.
I think honestly, I'll be honest, I don't know. It's unclear what they're looking at. DPS is looking at to determine when and where to expand. Yeah. Obviously, it's the state police, right? So it's we can nibble around the edges and ask questions of staff, but legally it's really hard to lobby. DPS. That's not so. You gain as much information as you can. Yeah. Then you work at the legislature. So I don't know. I mean, I think, like you said, the numbers, the polls, they all say, hey, we need to expand. And I think that they looked at their program and realized. And again, I'm not speaking for them. This is just me kind of trying to interpret some of their actions. They only had 3 licenses, right? 3 license holders.
One of which wasn't even
one of which has never opened, right? So access is really, really limited.
And if you talk to the physicians, many physicians have explicitly said, we can't get enough of this, right. Or I've prescribed this for my patients and we can't get that particular product. Right. Whether it's a very, very specific formulary on a very specific count, or maybe it's they prefer gummies versus lozenges or whatever, and they just can't get enough of whatever they need. So there's a supply chain issue, right? Yeah. That's created.
Yeah, for sure. It's in the other issue was the ratio, right? There was no cap on the milligrams. Mm-hmm. And so, if you needed to get to that 10 milligram level, well, you had to put a bunch of extra crap in it to get that ratio right. So you had kids that were getting sick from eating too much sugar, too much oil. Yeah. And so I really think the legislature, that was part of why I believe it was HB 1805 was introduced, was to clean some of this stuff up in the legislature, that they wouldn't direct DPS to kind of change their rules. Because the bill that we lobbied for, and that was part of what I was doing for the group that we were representing, was trying to get the bill passed, because it was going to add chronic pain to the list of conditions.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Which, a lot of the legislature said, well, this is just becoming medicinal, and we're half a step away from recreational. I don't necessarily agree, but that was the stance they took. And then it was going to allow.
What was the major pushback on chronic pain?
That it's too ambiguous. That it's anyone can go in and say my back hurts. And now the way the bill was written was chronic pain that would otherwise be treated with an opioid. So the angle that the author of the bill was taking is like, look, this is going to curb opioid use, which obviously you and I know it will. Like that's one of the benefits.
On average, in any state, on average, and of course there are the outliers, there are about 6,900 less opioid related deaths in states that has a more of expansive medical cannabis program.
That makes sense.
I know 6,900 doesn't sound like an overwhelming number, but those are lives.
That's a lot of lives.
Right. Those are a lot of people that wouldn't have died that otherwise may have had an opportunity to increase their mortality rate.
And look, and not to, go down this rabbit hole, but I mean, think about how many of those 7,000 deaths and how many other people are affected by that? How many families are destroyed by that?
That's a good point.
How many businesses are go under because of that?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So that it's an exponential
they're
number.
Really just not singular lives, but they're essentially lives that touch other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The opioid crisis, it destroys families and, leaves kids parentless. And so, so the exponential effect of that is I don't know if we can measure it, but you're right. And that was kind of the idea of that line in the legislation. And the other part was it was going to allow Department of Health and Human Services to add to the list of conditions without having to come back to the legislature. And for some members, that was a full stop.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, well, hold on.
Now that you're stepping on toes.
Well, yeah, we're not going to have our hand in this anymore. You're going to give this to an agency. And so that, like I said, it came out of the House. There were some amendments, and I believe, and this is a little foggy, I believe that was struck from the bill before it went to the Senate.
Okay.
Yeah.
But to continue on, like, what were your thoughts about the application process with the group that you and I represented? Because they came from a background of multi-state operators and
big multi-state operators, and so very, very successful people.
We were working around the clock on that project. I remember the last weekend before we submitted, I worked 18 hours that weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was, we were having calls just about every other day, and this was during trying to get the legislation passed. Yeah. So it was stressful, but what it did was, for me, it made me realize how naive I was when I did my application.
How little you actually did in 2016.
I mean, they had legitimate scientists and legitimate MDs and cultivators and former police officers. Oh yeah, and, writing all the plans for this. Whereas me and two friends I went to college with that raised a couple $1,000s and thought that we were gonna throw our hat in the ring.
I mean, applicants were getting consultants, architects. I mean, all types of different professionals. It really was a team approach because not everybody's going to know everything. You had a couple of lead people that were the QBs of the project, and you obviously had the person that were really pen to paper. Yeah. But it really was a multidisciplinary approach.
Very much so.
And I always tell, I don't know what you tell other people, but I always tell my clients or prospective clients that if you are interested in that, you don't have between $15 to $20 million of capital backing, you're kind of wasting your time.
Agreed.
And that's, it could even cost more because it's a very expensive endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
very expensive.
There's, and it is not to drift into criticism or anything with DPS. I mean, I think they're doing a good job of getting into an unknown area in the state, right? We've never been here.
Sure.
But some of the application questions were kind of open-ended and ambiguous. Mm-hmm. And so there was a point where, are we supposed to go buy this property and say like this, okay, well, that's going to cost a couple $1 million. Right. On the chance that we get a license. So yeah, to your point, it costs a lot of money, and there's some folks that have invested heavily. And again, it goes back to what I was saying about 2015. I mean, Texas is the last frontier as it comes to cannabis. Every state touching Texas has some sort of cannabis law that is much more,
at least on a broader fashion.
Yeah, more liberal.
It's
than
more
Texas,
expansive
for sure. Yeah.
Because we're looking at New Mexico, which is rec. Yep. Right. Arkansas has had a program for a while. Yep. Oklahoma speaks for itself, even though that's a different discussion. It's kind of a shit show there. Yeah. But you have Louisiana has a more expansive one. So all the touching states have much broader programs within their states. Yeah. And then you have us, right? Which we start off with one qualifying condition, expanded to 7, expanded to 8. And now we're still sitting at 8 with 2 licensees that's operational.
Right.
And we still don't know when or if they're going to issue any licenses from this last round.
That's correct.
And let's just call it for what it is. And I'm not here to bash on DPS, but let's really be truthful on what it is. You're looking at 200 plus applicants spending millions of dollars on an application in pursuit of a license that may or may not ever get issued now.
Yep.
Let's just call it for what it is.
No,
it's a statement of fact. And I know for a fact that there will likely be litigation because of it, because every single one of those applicants have put in time, toil, money, bodies on this process, which you and I just verified that at least for our clients, we put in a lot of hours. Yeah. it's a matter of being judicious and what's fair. I mean, I don't think it's fair that they're not going to issue any licenses. I don't know about you, but I can say that on my show. But
sure.
I'll just be on for the record that I think it's a disservice and it is not judicious for them to take people's money, they being DPS. Now, granted, I do think there are probably some other moving pieces in the background that I probably don't know about. So,
sure, yeah.
In all fairness, but at the end of the day, people did pay money, people did put in time, and they did raise the capital they needed, all for an endeavor that may not ever come to fruition.
You're absolutely right. It's been, and again, I've got folks in DPS that I consider friends and and work with on other issues. And I everyone there is very forthcoming, is very open about wanting to have a legitimate, successful program. That's what makes all this so confusing. And where, what is it that is, I don't want to say forcing their hand, but what was the change? What was it that changed from the application process to, well, because I was sitting in the room when they said it, it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of if we're going to expand.
That's right.
After the applications were in. And that felt.
Why wasn't that decision made before the applications were made?
That was to be honest, that was disheartening. It was, it made, frankly, it made me look silly in front of my client.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's confusing at best to be as gentle as possible.
Yeah, that process, it was just, to me, it's like if you're going to make this decision to say, maybe we're not going to issue licenses, why would you do it after you've accepted all the application fees, after all the applications have come in?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not bashing anybody at DPS. I'm certainly not bashing DPS, but I just find it a little suspicious and a little odd.
It's odd for sure.
Right.
It's odd for sure.
Because if I'm thinking this, I guarantee you many other people are thinking that as well.
No,
right.
Absolutely.
And so you do have a lot of disheartened applicants, and they've put in some real work into this. Yeah,
real work and real money. And I think our client has stated that if this round is not award anybody and that has applied, then they won't try again in Texas. And maybe that's
maybe that's the strategy.
Maybe that's the idea from some of our leaders at the top, because I mean, this is like we said, this is a big deal. Outside of this, the next biggest thing I think in Texas is gambling, and they're kind of on the same tracks where the public is fine with it. You've got business leaders that are fine with it. You've got local municipalities that are fine with it, and then it gets stuck in Austin. And like I said, if you don't get a kind of a nod from the tip top of the state leaders, it's really tough to get going. And a lot of times we don't know where they are on certain things. And so that makes this process a little more confusing.
All right. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a very kind of a controversial question, and speak freely.
Sure.
Or you can tell me to, that you're not comfortable with saying this on air, but as a lobbyist, in your opinion, this is your personal opinion. So for the record, this is his personal opinion. What do you think is the biggest inhibitor or biggest prevention in the state of Texas advancing policies and laws on the Hill or in Austin for cannabis?
Sure, right. And no, that's a great question. It's honestly, it's you kind of have the way that we have looked at it. You have three silos of lawmakers, right?
Yeah.
You've got one silo that are just hard nosed forever, whether it's religious or whatever it is. I don't care what the science says. I don't believe it. We're just gonna have a bunch of potheads running around. So you put them in one category, right? Then you've got the folks that just all they want to see is the science and the data. And if the science and the data can back it up, then I'm good. Now, a lot of those folks are probably still anti-recreational, right? They're like, I get it for the, intractable. I get it for cancer patients. I get it for, any of the conditions. But I don't want, you be able to just roll up and, buy a ounce of Kush because
puff the magic dragon.
Right. And then you have your unknowns. And I think that's the biggest inhibitor, because you have folks that have had certain ideas. I've got a number of examples. I won't say their names, but I've had conversations with members that were anti. Don't get me started with this. Then they had a relative who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and they had to, go figure out, how do we get them some relief? Because it's not here in the state. And now they're like, I get it, I see it, but it's that personal experience that some of these members have to have. And that's not different in any other walk of life. It's, you have to go through something before you truly understand. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but this is brand new in this state. And so we're fighting inertia. We're going from 0 to 1. And so so those unknowns and inertia is the biggest in anything in the state, is the biggest impediment to passing legislation.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you another pressing question. Do you think this administration that we have here in Texas is reticent about pushing forward any type of advanced policy on this?
I never say no. I'll never say it won't happen. I think we've come so far in just 10 years. And again, and having personal, I'll give you a quick anecdote. So Susan Hayes, shout out Susan Hayes.
Hey Susan.
She's kind of the one that's brought me through this. I met her back in 2015. That's how I met you.
Yeah.
2 sessions ago, so 21, we were working on a bill, and she had a client of hers who, and I think she'll be all right me telling this, who was a conservative farmer, literally owned a ranch, and his daughter had terrible Tourette's. And when she would get a tincture of a cannabis, it went away. It was so bad that she couldn't play sports, and so she wanted me to introduce her to one of the members of the committee. And so I went in and talked to him before, and he said, look, I'm not for this. I'll never be for this. I don't believe it. But I was like, we just take 15 minutes and meet. And he was like, yeah, sure, of course. 30 minutes later, after his father explaining everything to him, he went 15 minutes later after that and voted for the bill. And so it was that personal face-to-face showing up.
Right.
It takes time. Right. It takes effort. And
let's be honest. There are still plenty of congressional members in Texas that are very anti-cannabis.
Sure.
Right. There's probably some people in the current administration that's anti-cannabis. But do you think that viewpoint, like you just now talked about, that if they had a brother or a sister or a mother or a father or a kid that benefited from this program, do you think that their views may change?
Yeah,
because it's now there's a personal connection, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. You go back to that there is no access here, so it's hard to have ease of access for someone that's sick, and they see the benefit immediately. Whereas in other states, it's an alternative option. It's not here. So
it's not just a lack of options, but it's lack of ability to access it, because you may not have a qualifying condition, because our list of qualifying conditions are so limited. And I've always said physicians are actually the gatekeepers to all this, right? Sure. In a way that they're the ones that are actually putting patients on this program in Texas, right? At the end of the day, they are somewhat of the gatekeepers to how people access it, because the physicians themselves, they have to enroll into Teacup.
Right. No, right? They do. Yeah.
So if they don't register,
right,
they don't get to prescribe.
Well, and that's one of the biggest concerns they have is litigation in the state of doing something that, is in the gray area.
And that's actually how I got into cannabis. I don't know if I told you that. I got into cannabis as a healthcare attorney in 2013 because my first project was, what are physician liabilities prescribing versus recommending medical cannabis? And with healthcare providers, and a lot of my representation as an attorney is representing healthcare providers. So you have nursing homes that's questioning about, well, how is this going to impact my Medicare certification?
Right.
Can we use a lockbox program?
Right.
Can we administer versus them self-administering? How do we store it? Physicians are concerned about their DEA registration or the medical board guidance, right? So
like you said, I mean, then you get the federal aspect to it, where Medicare jumps in, and because it's still a Schedule I drug.
Yeah, and of course, when they become certified providers, there's a little clause in there that says that they attest that they will not aid and abet in a federal crime.
Right.
Well,
but
this is a federally illegal product, right? And for those of you who are watching, CMS has actually not issued any specific guidance on this, and I don't know of any enforcement action that's ever been taken by the DOJ or the CMS because of a healthcare provider that's tied to medical cannabis.
Yeah.
So. But so let's transition. Let's talk about a little bit about Capital Insights.
Sure.
Your lobbying firm doesn't just lobby on cannabis issues.
Correct.
Tell me about some of the other endeavors that you guys do locally, but as part of the local endeavors with municipalities, does cannabis ever come up? And do cannabis issues ever arise, whether it's on the hemp side or a vape shop or anything like that?
Yeah, so we typically represent businesses. Like I said, we've got a couple Fortune 50 companies. We do a lot in transportation.
Okay.
And so transportation, is on the local level a lot. We're at City Hall, and that's kind of the other thing. Living in Dallas and lobbying in Austin, during the interim, we do a lot of work in the city and county levels. All of our clients have some kind of issue, whether it's a right-of-way issue or some kind of ordinance that they need help with, or license or something. So it keeps us busy for sure. And I like to do the local work because it's such a cliche. Politics is all local, and it is because it's your city council member or your county commissioner. They have more impact on your life than a congressman or state senator. They are dealing with your neighborhood and whether they're going to put in a crosswalk or not. And so
it's more personal.
It's very personal.
It has more of an immediate impact. Right?
That's exactly right. And so like to do a lot of work there. And there's been some zoning stuff that's come up with hemp specifically. Delta 8, Delta 9, and what because it kind of slipped through a little bit when the hemp bill passed.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of everywhere. You see them next to gyms and next to UPS stores, and so there's been some questions of can we ban these guys from being in certain areas because it's you want to talk about it's a completely unregulated market. We don't really know what's in it. And you talk to DPS about this, and they'll the things that they confiscate, and they've tested it spans the gamut. And as far as strength goes, where it's come from, where it's manufactured,
the accuracy of the certificate of analysis,
exactly.
Carcinogens, molds, bacteria, and so forth. You've heard that several vape shops have been raided in the last couple of months, right?
No, so there is a concern at the city and county level for that of just how bad is some of this stuff. I don't know if you remember in the 90s. I mean, there was the herbal ecstasy, right? That you could get at 7-Eleven.
Yeah,
I feel like that's kind of the world we're in right now. Is Delta 8, Delta 9, those, while they're technically hemp and legal, what they do to them I mean, it's really dangerous stuff.
Well, see, I mean, the legality issue is a different topic.
Sure.
I can argue against the fact that it's arguably illegal, right?
Right.
But that's a different discussion for a different day. But I find it interesting because if you look at the states that have very restrictive regulations when it comes to Delta 8 THC, that's hemp derived, Delta 9 THC, that's hemp derived, all the hemp derived cannabinoids, that has a psychoactive reaction. The states that have an adult use, that's legalized adult use, they're the ones that's restricting it more. So, and I get it because it competes with the adult market.
Right.
Because we don't have an adult market, Texas has kind of forced everyone's hand into this market because we have no other options.
Right.
So is it really a beast that's been created because policies within Texas have forced other people's hands into this market, which, as you said, it becomes more unregulated. So you have unregulated products versus a highly regulated market in other states, such as, we'll just say Minnesota or Colorado or California, where, well, actually California is a bad example because I think like 60-70% of the products on the market is from the legacy market, right? So, anyways, bad example. So I guess my point is that did we create this unregulated, quasi-legal, quasi-illegal market ourselves because Texas policy is so anti-adult use?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And, you look at anything, if you want a black market to move in somewhere, don't regulate anything. Yeah. As soon as you regulate things and you make it a legitimate business, again, I'll take liquor again. It's as soon as that was, the 20s and 30s were insane with the crime and organized crime and bootlegging, and bathtub gin. As soon as you regulate it, and as soon as you have the government's hands around it, and so safety, access, you have a whole system. Who makes backyard gin anymore? Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I'm not sitting here saying if we legalize marijuana, then the cartels are gone forever, and immigration's got to be fine, and we're gonna not have any problems with that. That's not what I'm saying, but it'll certainly reduce that. Yeah, it'll cut one of the legs off of the cartels if we have a serious regulated market here in Texas that is treated. And again, our client, other folks in the industry, that's what they want. They want to be a legitimate business. Yeah. Some of the things that I was doing for our client was going and joining chambers of commerce. Yeah. And saying, look, we want to be a partner here in the neighborhood. We want to. I mean, the amount of money that they gave away to foundations and to good causes. That's what they want to be, a legitimate partner. They want to be a Total Wine and More in the neighborhood where people feel safe to go and get. It goes back
to what you're saying, you showing up and having developing that trust and eliminating the not in my backyard attitude. Correct. Right. Yeah. Being part of the community, letting people know that you're a contributor in the community, how you create jobs, and that you're not a threat to their kids. You're not a threat to whomever.
It's not a burned out 7-Eleven where it's like, oh, hey, you can't go down there. Don't go down there. Right. And I'm not saying that we're trying to, jump to recreational. That's not what I'm saying. It's, but having a safe dispensary that people trust, that they feel like they're just going to a Walgreens, as opposed to, oh, that's a CD place.
I mean, I think we can have these conversations in circles over and over because the counter argument to that is until 280E changes, they have to raise the prices of the products. It's regulated, right? And in order for them to be profitable, then if it's so expensive, are people not deferring to the legacy market anyways? Sure. Right. So that's another discussion. But we have to wrap up. But tell me about your 2024 plans. What is in sight for you, your dad, Drew, and Capital Insights? Yeah. So I'm actually really, really excited about 2024, and cannabis is kind of on pause for us. We're wait to see what DPS will do next year.
But part of our other business is we do a lot of business development and market entry. So we'll go overseas and go to water conferences for water innovation companies, and we'll help them come break the market in the United States and Texas.
We talked about that.
Yeah, so that's a big part of our interim.
I think you said it was in the Netherlands.
It was in Amsterdam. Yeah. Speaking of regulation, they have their hands around everything. So that's something that we do a lot of, and we've been pretty successful. We just had a couple of really successful meetings with some potential clients right before the holidays, and really looking forward to that. And we're also thinking about expanding our firm as well. So maybe add some other partners. I'm really looking forward to 2024.
All right. Well, hey, it's been a great discussion with you, man. We've had a lot of one-on-ones, and we obviously got to work on a project together. But I think this was a valuable discussion.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for coming.